um, let's just have an opening prayer, and we will include in it our prayer box. And, I was struck by your creed of the heart, which I just love, and I probably haven't heard that inside myself or with my ears since the last time we were here. So let's just open in prayer, reiterating your beautiful creed of the heart. As we turn within, we affirm our God is love. Our race is human. Our religion is oneness. And as we turn even more deeply within, we are just so grateful to affirm such beautiful truths. For we know that God is a love that has no bounds and a power that has no limit. It is a presence within us that calls forth our love, our oneness as humans on this planet connected to the divine. And so as we open our service today, we just fill our hearts with gratitude for this community, for being able to join together in a spirit of love and oneness. We ask a blessing on this community, on each other here, as we form a circle of light. And in that circle of light and love, we put all our prayers, all the challenges that our world is going through. For we know that nothing is greater than God, that God's goodness, God's love. And so, as you think of all the prayers in the prayer box here, all the prayers on your hearts and minds, and you think of anyone in this community, in our world, who is in need of prayer, right? Who's feeling a personal challenge, who feels the challenge of the COVID pandemic, who is suffering in any way, who feels the stress of what's going on in our country and the divisiveness, right? We can just put all of that into the middle of our circle of light, knowing that those are truly but appearances, and that we, as spiritual beings connected to the divine, connected to the love of God, can look at those challenges and say, they are not the truth of who and what we are. They are not the truth of that highest and best, but we call that forth. We call forth the highest and best for each and every one. And so I invite you to just say silently or aloud any prayer request on your heart or mind into that circle of light where there is the calling forth and lifting up into divine order all our prayers right now, silently or aloud. So we know that every prayer is heard and answered. And as we move forth in this time, this day, with grateful hearts for all the good in our lives, we truly know we are blessed. We truly know that God's got it. God's got all of us, that we are calling forth a higher consciousness, a blessed consciousness for ourselves, for each other, and for the world. And so in that spirit of love and gratitude, we pray all of this in the name and through the power of that living, loving, divine presence, the Christ within. And so it is. Amen. And then we also want to affirm our affirmation for today, which is in your bulletin, which just declares, I am free to be me. Together, I am free to be me. And so it is. Amen.
a treat it is to be here. Just such a special, special, special treat. And as Joy said, this is the first, shall we say, in-person service that I've done this year. I've done some Zoom ones with people, and you can see people on the screen, but it's so much nicer and warmer and heartfelt to see your smiling faces. Yay!
Smiling eyes.
Your smiling eyes too. Yes, indeed. In that prayer, where Joy put in that little affirmation, that this is not the truth. It made me think. Joy and I had been going back through the Star Wars movies and watching all the Star Wars movies. It made me think in the very first one that was released early on, when they're trying to sneak in, and Obi-Wan and Luke are trying to find a ship. Thank you, babe. And to get away with, and they're stopped by the stormtroopers, and Obi-Wan goes, "This is not the droid you're looking for." Same thing. This is not the truth of our experience. Just move it away. So how many of you, if I may ask a question, would like to live a more mindful life? Hey, all right. Well, that's good. And I'm glad you're interested, because this is going to take a while. So you need to get settled in. We need a little more shade. Daily, maybe to get some lunch ordered for us. Maybe even some pizzas for dinner and some blankets and pillows, so we can spend the night. It's going to take a while. Nah. Actually, it won't take that long. So what is mindfulness? It's just directing our attention to our experience as it unfolds, moment by moment by moment. Mindfulness trains us to respond in a more helpful and in a more responsible manner. It improves our thought processes, even our feelings, and our interactions with others, and it helps us perform better, because we can be more relaxed, more calm in all of our interactions. And living a mindful life starts with awareness. Awareness in the present moment, being here and now. Living a mindful life encompasses surrender. Surrender into the flow of life with a non-judgmental acceptance. And living a mindful life leads us to freedom. A mindful life of freedom. That's really what mindfulness is. It's a way of life, a way of living. But I have to ask, as you walk through life, is your mind full or mindful? Think of it like someone's walking down the road and there's two thought bubbles over them. And one thought bubble is this serene scene with the trees and nature and beautiful sun. The other thought bubble, just like this. Just like this. And the other thought bubble is a mind full of, I got to talk to that person, and next week I need to do this. I forgot to pick up things at the store and do this. A mind full. So is our being mindful or a mind just full? Enjoying the present without holding on. Mindfulness, again, is simply being aware of what's happening right now without wishing it was different. That'd be nice if the sun wasn't so hot, but we can be here without wishing it was different. And we can enjoy the present without holding on when it changes, which it will. And we can even be with unpleasantness without fearing that it'll always be that way, because it won't. Antoine Saint-Exupéry, the French pioneering aviator and author of The Little Prince, says this: "I know but one freedom, and that is the freedom of the mind." And mindfulness, being in the present moment, it opens up freedom. Mindfulness gives you time. time gives you choices. And choices skillfully made lead us to freedom. Now, we don't have to be swept away by our feelings. You and I can respond with wisdom. We can respond with kindness, rather than responding from habit or reactivity. I went to University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia, for college, and it's very affectionately called by the people who are there TJU. It's Thomas Jefferson's University because he founded it. And I remember when I was there, not very long, I saw this Jefferson quote, and it really touched my heart, and I really followed it through my life. So Thomas Jefferson wrote to John Adams, and he was describing the institution that he was establishing and its purpose. And Jefferson said, "For here we are not afraid to follow the truth, wherever it may lead." It's important to remember that we find the truth right here, in the present moment, right here and right now. You think about it for a minute. Where else would we expect to find it? Where else could it possibly be? Mindfulness teaches us we don't have to fix, we don't have to label, we don't have to judge what arises. In fact, many times, trying to fix a situation is useless because many of them are out of our control. I mean, do we really think that people are going to drive their cars the way we think they should? Right?
Right.
But don't we think that way? Something we have no control over at all. We think they really should do that different. Instead, we can learn how to respond to a situation without reacting. And this gives us an amazing amount of freedom and helps us to be unstuck. So how do we cultivate this freedom? Well, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh says this: freedom is not given us by anything. We have to cultivate it in ourselves. And it is a daily practice. Imagine that thought. So that was like a little new thought for me, just the way he said it. Freedom is a practice. I think we're so used to thinking freedom, well, we're free, and so it's done. No big deal. But freedom, especially in terms of mindfulness, it's a practice. It goes on. No one can prevent you from being aware of each step you take, or each breath you take in or out. It's being in the moment. Each moment, moment by moment, with non-judgmental awareness. Simple non-judgmental awareness. You can imagine you're sitting there in your non-judgmental self-awareness and your cell phone rings. Oh, hey, Ed, can I call you back in a moment here? So rather than judging and using labels like good and bad, we might consider calling things helpful or not helpful. And this in itself can help us from softening our tendency to be a little less reactive. Oh, that's helpful and not helpful. It's a very simple change. Eckhart Tolle, the best-selling author and one of my wife's favorite spiritual teachers, says this: the greatest difficulty is the mental resistance to things that arise and the underlying assumption that they should not. I'm going to say that again. The greatest difficulty is the mental resistance that we put up to things that arise, things that occur in our life, and that's based on the underlying assumption that they should not. So imagine believing that what is happening, well, it shouldn't be happening. That the reality that's going on in any moment shouldn't be going on. Think about it. That's like believing, well, reality shouldn't be reality. But that's what we do. That's how we run our minds. And, that's a pretty speculative assumption to base our happiness on. happiness truly consisted just in physical ease or freedom from care, well, maybe the happiest individual in the world wouldn't be a man or woman, it would be a cow. So how to be more mindful? In a simple way, it's just loving what is. Loving whatever is going on in the moment. Byron Katie, who was a wonderful, masterful spiritual teacher about mindfulness and about living in the present moment, that's the actual title of her work, title of her book. But that's what she calls her practice. It's just loving what is. Whatever is, you just love that in the moment. And one of the best practices for helping us develop more mindfulness is meditation. Do you remember that old insurance commercial on television? Even a caveman could do it. Well, meditation, I know many of you are practiced at meditating. But if you aren't, it's actually so easy. Even a dog can do it. Remember that ancient canine mantra? Bow low, bow low. Even a dog can do it. So let's look at this a little closer. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning addresses mindfulness in this way. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose. Our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so mindfulness is not just actually for us practicing it, for our singular benefit, because we can move our mindfulness into action. We can contribute to the entire world. Reading Thich Nhat Hanh again. The most precious gift we can offer others is our presence. When mindfulness embraces those we love, they will bloom like flowers. And we can offer this gift of our dedication and our determination to live in mindfulness. That's our gift to the world. It seems like it's a gift to us, but it's really that and much, much more a gift to the world. Around those days I was in college, I was in Washington, D.C. with friends. Late one evening, we were walking around looking at the monuments, beautifully lit up at night. And we were over at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. It's beautiful there on the tidal pool with the lights reflecting in the water. And Thomas Jefferson stands for freedom as the author of the Declaration of Independence, notwithstanding he did own some slaves. But he stands a wonderful symbol for freedom. Freedom of a democratic government. And I remember that evening walking inside the memorial and gazing at this huge statue of Jefferson in the middle. And I was looking around, and it's in his favorite rotunda shape, and engraved in the marble up around the top edge of the rotunda were these words that I had never even heard before that Jefferson said. It just took my breath away. Jefferson said, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. I have sworn upon the altar of God." He wasn't just adding this to his to-do list, get something done, maybe not getting it done. Eternal hostility against every form of tyranny. He's absolutely dedicated over the mind of man. And it was those last few words that really, really touched me deeply. He just wasn't talking about physical liberty and freedom from tyranny for, imprisonment or physically. Tyranny over the mind of humankind. Everyone, that level of freedom is what he was really advocating for. Now this mindfulness, this non-judgmental awareness, is practiced in many different spiritual traditions. For example, in Buddhism, a part of the practice is non-attachment. Non-attachment to things, even thoughts, non-attachment to anything. And so there's a story of this student who was very, very diligent in his studies and practice and meditation. And one day he's meeting with his master. They hadn't met in a while, and the student really wanted to hear what his master was going to say to him. His master said, "I've never met anyone so thoughtless in my life. Keep up the good work." So mindfulness, it's not difficult. We just need to remember to do it. One of the things Joy and I are using for part of our spiritual practice this year is A Course in Miracles, and we use an app for it, so it has a wonderful reminder. It gives a chime on every hour, just helps us bring it back to mind, to keep remembering. Because if we're rushing on to the next moment, what happens to the one we're in? We're never really here. So here's a simple practice you can try. Over the next week, we'll call it taking a mindfulness break. And you can think of it like a stoplight. First red, stop. Take a breath. Open yourself to just a little more awareness of what's going on in you, what's going on around you. And observe. That will naturally allow you just to soften a little bit. Observe without judgment. And then green to see. Just a little practice. Think of it like a stoplight. So mindfulness is purposely paying attention in the present moment without making any kind of judgment. Krishnamurti says this about inner freedom. I don't mind what happens. That is the essence of inner freedom. That is a timeless spiritual truth. Jiddu Krishnamurti, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest religious thinkers and teachers of all time. He, perhaps more than anyone else in the 20th century, was the major factor in bringing the mind of Eastern traditions into the West and introducing those teachings. He says, truth is a pathless land. You cannot approach it through any organization, through any creed. And when our minds are free from the old, it is only then we can meet everything anew. And therein lies the joy. And it makes it so easy to find joy. Oh, joy! So let us remember that living a mindful life starts with the relaxed awareness of the present moment. As the great teacher Ram Dass taught us, simply be here now. And it's part of a surrender with the non-judgmental acceptance of life, of loving what is. And that opens us up to freedom. Freedom of mind to live the lives we've always desired in peace, in love, and in joy. Eckhart Tolle teaches us the moment the judgment stops through the acceptance of what is, that is the moment that you are free from the limitations of the mind. Free to live a mindful life. So it is.